Hello again, Struckweb. Today I'm bringing you another class skills showcase, and this one is for the Sharpshooter class in Torchlight 3. So here I will be showing you first the adventurer skills, and then next after that I will show you the precision skills. And think about item synergies for the adventurer skills by looking at this image, the adventurer musketeer boots, that kind of allow you to do certain bonuses, certain chance to gain an additional charge of the precision skill bonus after using an adventurer skill. I will be showing you some other synergies for specific items for each skill as we go through it, starting with, for example, the Goblin Legion, which, as you see, is a skill that allows you to summon some goblins. And as you upgrade that skill, you can get more and more summons to work with. The way this skill works is you cast it and then you get 2 goblins, and then for the next 3 times you use a precision skill, regardless if you use another adventurer skill before that or not, you get extra 2 per cast, meaning you get 6 more goblins for a total of 8. And that is pretty fun, pretty great to experiment with, to stack those goblins, and then eventually you can get that goblin brute at tier 3 at level 10. And there's this rifle of leader Shasta, which is very funny name, which allows you to summon 3 ghostly gunners. And it says also summon 3 ghostly gunners, so it's not replacing your current goblins with those, but just giving you the additional ones. And this would be a very nice thing to test with Goblin Legion based builds, even if it's not a summoner build, if it's just something that uses the goblins for a little bit of extra support, a little bit of extra body blocking, it's still gonna be nice to stack those. But eventually I'm hoping that they rework this plus 65% pet damage to maybe be 30 or 35 or 25, but also apply to goblins and other summons like the next one you're going to see, which would be Royal Shasta. Overall you can see the goblins don't do that much damage, but it adds up to your damage, and they really can kind of help with keeping some of the enemies busy and occupied while you do damage with your other skills. Now here is Royal Shasta. She is amazing because first, not only can she taunt, but when you upgrade her, you can get the enemies to take 50% more damage while they're taunted. There is Shasta's Promise, which gives Royal Shasta to deal 100% more damage and to heal you for 10% of your max HP when she taunts. So that's a great synergy, because first she's taunting, then she's making the enemies that are taunted take 50% more damage from all sources, regardless whether you are damaging them, whether it's another summon, whether it's your pet, whether it's an ally like another player, they're taking more damage. So Royal Shasta is my go-to skill for any build. Even if you're going for a pure DPS build like reload targeted strikes meta build, you would still want Royal Shasta for that 50% extra damage to taunted. So those items that you're seeing as synergies are good both for wearing or for the legendarium. You're gonna have to make some choices whether you want certain items like Shasta's Promise to be equipped or to be in the legendarium. Now next we're gonna move on to another great skill for any build, and that's Goose Visage. What it does is, first it's a blink, then you can blink through some walls, then it gives you a buff. A buff that lets you, for the next 3 casts of a precision skill after it, if you don't use another adventurer skill to replace the adventurer bonus, you get 50% crit chance. And you can see there's interesting upgrades on the skill as well, so you kind of have to decide whether you want to go for tier 1, tier 2 or tier 3, but overall the skill is great even if you just spent 1 point into it. Of course I would always suggest get at least 1 extra charge, even if you don't upgrade it to the maximum. The crit chance also increases as you level up the skill, so that's also something to consider. And you can also restore charges with the musketeer pauldrons, 1 and 2 charges if you have the set bonus. So that's the suggested synergy. This skill also can be replenished by reload, so if you have 0 charges and you use reload, you get back to 2 or 3 charges based on how much maximum charges you've got. very good skill for any build, because you want that mobility, you want that extra crit chance. Scout's Bones, it's a skill that many people don't use. I've not made builds with it, but it probably can be fun with certain poison based builds. Basically it's that rolling bow of rats that poison the enemies, and then at the end I think it does a little bit more damage. It lets your precision skills, the next 3 precision skills, do poison damage, and then there's the infectious shooter, which makes it fire off poison missiles around it that deal extra 50% weapon damage. So that's probably similar to entropy, but I've never gotten the pistol to try it, but I'm assuming it works similar to the mage's entropy, firing off missiles as it moves. Yeah, it's kind of underwhelming, but probably with this item there might be some fun builds to try. Not meta, but fun builds nevertheless. Next we've got Rizzi's Fate, which is a AoE that you place on the ground that can slow the enemies, and it can also do a little bit of extra damage over time. It also wows you when you invest into tier 2 to get 10% damage versus slowed, blinded and stunned targets. And it also allows you for the next 3 precision skills you cast to be able to immobilize enemies, so to root them in place. It's not a bad skill, and when you max it to the tier 3, to level 10, you can get an additional summon for a summoner build. I've not tested maxing this skill yet, but maybe it's gonna be fun to get that spellcaster, to get that Nethering spellcaster on your side on a summoner build. So I think you might want to include this even if it's just as a passive for the 10% against blinded, stunned and slowed targets, if you have something that lets you blind, slow or stun, even if you don't use it in your skill bar, because 10% extra damage is not a bad thing to have eventually for like a level 60 setup. Now next off we have a great skill called Sacrifice to Goose. It applies vulnerability and it can stack with other sources of vulnerability, such as the blasting charge on the Realm Master, for example. It's very nice if you play with others to increase the whole team's damage, and you can see it has a very nice precision bonus buff that allows you for the next 3 precision skills to fire 3 ghostly eagle missiles on activation, dealing 40% weapon damage on hit. And you can increase the damage vulnerability, which I think is amazing, with the tier 1 bonus, and the tier 2 bonus also gives you 10% cooldown for sharpshooter skill cooldowns. So if you're not using reload on your setup, you might want to consider investing if you want that cooldown reduction, that 10%. But if you're using a reload, you can just reset your sharpshooter skill cooldowns with reload. Things like Shasta's Promise, Vow of Shasta I mean, can benefit from that greatly. So you can see Lil Drake is the item. Sacrifice to Goose now leaves a burning area of impact, leaving etc. burning damage in the field. It's not a bad synergy with burning builds, with fire builds, so definitely a nice one. And next we move on to Curse of Pipi. Curse of Pipi is an interesting and very nice skill that allows you to take less damage. You can see I took certain amount of damage before the curse, and now with the curse I'm taking much less. Fortunately I had the pet with me while testing this, so I couldn't show you that much. I tried to record for long enough so you can see the difference between a cursed enemy and a not cursed enemy in doing damage to me. Also, if you hit the enemies with the next 3 precision skills after it, you're gonna be reapplying the curse, but you cannot stack it more than 2 times on an enemy. So you can, for example, hit one enemy once after the curse to make it get 2 stacks, and another enemy that has not been cursed you can hit 2 more times with your next 2 remaining casts, and just apply those stacks on it. Of course, if it's things like targeted strikes or AoVs or whatever, you can kind of target more. Now tight grouping. Tight grouping is a very nice beginner skill, and not just as a beginner skill, even afterwards it's pretty decent to use. And it's amazing when you are going for relic active skill cooldown builds, so when you want to invest for that extra skill cooldown, it really helps stuck with the relic skill cooldown that you can invest in the relic tree to give you 50 plus 20%. So that means on a 10-second cooldown you're getting 2 seconds from this skill down. Definitely nice, and it's an interesting skill that many of you might just enjoy the mechanics of that conal spread multi-shot AoE. It's not as multi-shot as scatter shot, but scatter shot got nerfed severely by giving it a 4-second cooldown. It doesn't have that much damage, but it definitely has a decent amount of damage, so I think everyone should consider, if not for the late levels, at least for the early levels, to use that skill, and then eventually move on to something different. Now this brings us to Onslaught. It's kind of underwhelming damage wise. I wish this skill did more damage than it actually does. It feels underwhelming, and people are telling me that even with the Storm Driver bow that you're seeing an image of, it still feels underwhelming. I was using it in my summoner build because I thought it's nice to have my pets taunting and grouping up the enemies in one place while I spam Onslaught and my relic active skill on them. But yeah, Onslaught definitely isn't the best for damage, but if you like that rain of arrows kind of mechanic where you're shooting arrows from the sky to rain on the enemies, you can combine that with Revolt to spam it, or you can combine it with something else like Curse of Rizzi to make it do more damage, and so on. It is a fun skill, it's definitely something that some of you might like, but again I wish it had more damage than it does right now. It just feels underwhelming when you compare it to explosive arrow, when you compare it to the damage of targeted strikes, which is super meta and hopefully doesn't get nerfed. I'd much rather see the weaker skills get buffed than the strong skills like targeted strikes get nerfed. So time will tell what the next few weeks or a month of patching will bring to the balancing in the game. But now let's see targeted strikes. Targeted strikes, probably the strongest sharpshooter skill right now, and combine this with Revolt, combine this with a taunting Royal Shasta. I'm intentionally not using Royal Shasta in here, so you can only see my damage without taunting the enemies, and compare that. Of course, all of this footage is recorded on Ridiculous, but versus lower level enemies than me, just so I can just test the weaker skills without having high chance of dying in this zone. So you can see the skill has so much spammability when you get Revolt, and when you combine it with Goose, Visage and time it correctly, so you can get the next 3 hits of this. It's just an amazing skill. So right now probably the meta would be using Royal Shasta to taunt the enemies and make them take more damage, using targeted strikes and using Revolt and upgrading Revolt to the tier 2 bonus for extra 30% damage to targeted strikes, and then just getting the most DPS-y weapon you can get. So that's pretty strong. I mean, there's of course other options that you can go for, but now let's talk about Revolt. Revolt is such a great skill for many builds. First, it resets your adventure skill cooldowns. So if you, for example, are using Goose Visage, you can teleport 3 times, use Revolt and teleport another 3 times immediately. Then it also fills your ammo. So any precision skill that is more spammy and consumes a lot of ammo, like targeted strikes, will get very strong from having Revolt in your build. So one of the best skills in the game right now still, so hopefully this doesn't get a nerf as well and remains as it is. It's pretty nice. It's again one of my favorite skills. I've been playing this skill since the late days of the alpha and the closed beta. And I was testing scatter shot revolt builds back then, which were amazing, but more about scatter shot when the skill comes at the end of the video. So I'm telling you, use this skill, experiment with it in many builds. Of course, if you don't think you need it, don't use it and just invest into the tier 2 bonus for the precision skills damage. But it's super spammy, and if you max it out, you can get so much mobility that you're gonna be just faster than a Dusk Mage probably sometimes. Now, Explosive Arrow, this skill is very nice with fire builds with the fire relic that I'm using right now. If you get it to tier 1, and I got it to tier 1 last night when I was experimenting some things, it can burn the enemies and it can proc things like Lingering Blaze and like the fire bows that storm on top of enemies. It does a lot of damage, but there's two things I don't like about this skill, and that's both of those things related to the way it fires. First, when you fire on an enemy that's very far away, it takes so long to reach that enemy. And then you have such a good mechanic where you fire on an enemy next to you, it takes super short time to reach that enemy. So maybe this needs to be kind of rebalanced so that the parabolic flight of the arrow isn't that high and they reach long range targets quicker. But this can reach targets much farther away than other skills, and you saw that there's also items that you can use, such as the Herman's Master Bow, to boost the skill, so that's a nice synergy to consider as well. But yeah, hopefully they rework those arrows so they don't go that high in the air and reach their targets far away from us much quicker than they do right now. So moving on, we would be checking another precision skill, and this would be Heart Seeker. It's a piercing arrow that doesn't travel that far away, but it still travels pretty far away. I've tested it. And it does decent damage, and you can proc it with Heart Shocker. With a two-tone pull you can proc it while using other precision skills, and with Heart Shocker you can buff it to do chain lightning on hit, striking up to 3 enemies for 50% of the current damage of Heart Seeker. So there's different nice synergies. And I'm wondering, if I'm wearing the Heart Shocker and the two-tone pull, like one of them being in the legendary and one of them equipped, would the two-tone pull procs of Heart Seeker have the chain lightning? This is something which I really want to test if I get those items. If someone has tested it, please do share with us the info. It's a fun skill, but I don't think it's that great the way I've tested it. I mean, maybe I haven't tested enough, but it seems a little bit underwhelming compared to things like targeted strikes, explosive arrow, or tight grouping. But it does have interesting bonuses you can invest into, like the healing one, but it still doesn't seem that it's that big of a healing when you know that you can die from 2 or 3 hits when geared up, maybe 4 hits if you're super geared up for the content you're doing. Overall, not a bad skill, but not something I'm considering in most of my builds that I have in mind right now. And this brings us to Scatter Shot. I'm so disappointed by the way they changed this skill. I understand that it might have been a little bit overpowered and they wanted to have skills that are on cooldown and are not spammy skills. But this is such a huge blow to this skill, giving it a 4-second cooldown. Even if we stack cooldown reduction, which we only can stack 10% from our passives, because they seem to have removed items that give you cooldown reduction to X skill, or at least such don't exist for Scatter Shot. It can do shitloads of damage still. But that 4-second cooldown kind of kills it, and keeping it on your skill bar might be fun to stack some damage on bosses with a very high damage item, and with this item that I showed you, the wingspan, where it gets twice the cooldown, which would be 8 seconds, mind you. And that means it can go to 7.2 seconds with the cooldown reduction, and then it gets double the damage. But I think this 4-second cooldown probably needs to be 2 seconds, and with that bow we get it to 4 seconds, and maybe that's gonna be fine. Still not gonna be that spammy, but then all that damage it can do might be worth considering putting in your skill bar. So that's it for now when it comes to showing you the skills for this class. I will be uploading soon one for the Dusk Mage and for the Realm Master. I've already uploaded one for the Forged yesterday. You might wanna see that if you're thinking of making a Forged. So let me know what builds you like, what skills you like if you want in the comment section. I would be happy to hear from you regarding which one is your favorite. If you wanna get notified for more content about this game or others like it, or various different types of RPGs, say RPGs, tactical RPGs, all sorts of RPGs, or other types of wooters, you could subscribe to my channel, get that bell button clicked to not miss those notifications. Thanks again for watching the video, folks. Keep it cool, and until next time, goodbye.